The night of the Forrester Spring Collection debut was supposed to mark Thomas Forrester's redemption. After years clawing his way back into the family's good graces, he had finally been given full creative reins again. His designs had stunned in preview sessions. The buzz was electric. Forrester Creations was set to reclaim the runway. But behind Thomas's focused gaze and near-perfect sketches, there was a storm building. One that had nothing to do with fashion. One name haunted him, Luna. She had arrived as a bright, young intern with fresh ideas and a wide-eyed reverence for the Forrester legacy. She had charm, wit, and, most of all, Hope's trust. But Thomas saw something in her, flickers of familiarity, the kind of presence that felt rehearsed. Then came the whisper, a private slip of information, a buried family truth he wasn't supposed to hear. Luna was Brooke's daughter. At first, he thought it had to be a lie. Brooke Logan had never mentioned another child. Not to Ridge, not to Hope, not to anyone in the family. But documents didn't lie. A medical record, accidentally attached to a Forrester file, listed Luna's full name, Luna Logan. The mother, Brooke Logan. Thomas felt the world tip under him. That meant Luna, who had now become a quiet fixture in the company, increasingly close to RJ, slowly rising in Hope's team, was a Logan. And worse, no one knew. The revelation tore open wounds Thomas had fought years to seal. The Logan name had shadowed the Forrester legacy with scandal after scandal. Hope had been the exception. Hope, in his eyes, had transcended the manipulation and deceit her mother had built a life upon. But now, here was Luna, the secret daughter, embedded inside Forrester, hidden in plain sight. Thomas confronted Brooke in private. She denied it at first. Then, when he pushed harder, presented what he knew, Brooke crumbled. Yes, Luna was hers. Born from a brief affair she'd buried, protected, and eventually distanced. Luna had grown up believing someone else was her mother. Only recently had Brooke reconnected with her and convinced her to apply for an internship at Forrester. But under no circumstances was she to use the Logan name. Thomas's disgust was immediate. You brought her in like a Trojan horse, he said through clenched teeth. You're planting another Logan in this family's heart without giving anyone the choice to see it coming, Brooke pleaded. She offered to support Thomas's position as head designer permanently. She promised to speak to Ridge on his behalf, to make sure the collection, his collection, was a launchpad to lasting influence at Forrester. All she wanted was silence. But silence had cost Thomas everything before. Silence had destroyed families. He'd seen what happened when truths were buried, when lines blurred for the sake of keeping peace. Still, he said nothing. For a time, he kept working. He let the collection bloom. He let Brooke believe he'd taken the deal. But Steffi saw the fracture. Her instincts, always sharp when it came to her brother's demons, picked up on the late-night meetings, the side glances, the tension whenever Brooke walked into the design studio. Steffi began trailing Brooke, listening outside closed doors, watching Thomas's body language around Luna. She knew something was wrong. Something big. The night of the show, the room buzzed with energy. The Forrester family flanked the front row. Ridge, Eric, Steffi, Hope, RJ, Brooke, beaming at what was supposed to be Thomas's crowning achievement. The lights dimmed. The models emerged. Applause followed. Then Thomas stepped forward. But instead of thanking the team, instead of celebrating, he reached into his jacket and produced a small audio recorder. He looked directly at Hope. Then at RJ. Then at Brooke. I wasn't going to do this, he said, voice calm but unsteady. But I learned a long time ago that hiding the truth helps no one. Secrets destroy families. And this one is too big to bury. He pressed play. Brooke's voice echoed through the sound system. Her conversation with Thomas, recorded weeks earlier. Yes, she's my daughter. But no one needs to know. Especially not Ridge. Or Hope. And definitely not RJ. If this gets out, everything explodes. Silence fell like a bomb. Gasps scattered across the room. Ridge's face turned to stone. Hope turned to her mother in disbelief. RJ looked as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Thomas turned off the recorder. Luna is a Logan, Brooke's daughter, and she's been here, under all of our noses. While Brooke hoped no one would find out, Brooke tried to speak, but Ridge stood first. How many secrets, Brooke? His voice was low, furious. How many more bombs are you sitting on? Hope was frozen. She looked from her mother to Luna, who had now emerged from backstage, eyes wide and locked in place like a deer in headlights. Is it true? Hope whispered. Brooke could only nod. RJ looked at Luna, betrayed. Why didn't you tell me? Luna's lip trembled. I didn't know, not at first. Then when I did, I didn't know how. The room became a battlefield. The once glorious launch of Thomas's collection had become the reignition of an age-old war. Logan versus Forrester. And now, Luna stood at the center of it. Ridge turned his back on Brooke, walking out without another word. Hope followed, tears in her eyes. RJ stood frozen for a moment longer before storming off. Steffi didn't leave. She approached Thomas, jaw clenched. You blew it all up. I told the truth. You told your truth, she snapped. But now the company's on fire again. Thomas didn't flinch. Maybe it needed to burn. Backstage, Luna sobbed in silence. Her entire world had collapsed in a single moment. The name she had buried, the family she never asked for, now weaponized against her. Brooke tried to console her, but Luna pushed her away. You used me. You let me walk into this with no shield. No name. No chance. Brooke reached for her again. I wanted to protect you. No, Luna hissed. You wanted to protect yourself. The fallout was immediate. Ridge demanded Brooke step away from Forrester business until further notice. Hope took a leave of absence. Citing personal betrayal and emotional fatigue, RJ disappeared for days. Steffi and Thomas took over the collection rollout, now rebranded as a Forrester reclamation. An unsubtle message that the family was drawing hard lines again. Brooke tried to apologize. To Ridge. To Hope. To Luna. But it wasn't enough. The damage was permanent. Luna, once the quiet intern, now found herself caught in a legacy feud bigger than she'd ever imagined. For half the family, she was a symbol of betrayal. For the other half, she was a pawn that had broken the board. And Thomas, for all his righteousness, hadn't escaped unscathed either. Hope refused to speak to him. You wanted to punish my mother, she said when they finally crossed paths again. You didn't care who else got hurt. Thomas didn't deny it, because maybe, deep down, that had always been the truth. The war was back. Logan versus Forrester. Only this time, it wasn't Brooke versus Taylor, or Ridge caught in the middle. This time, it was the next generation. Thomas, Steffi, Hope, RJ, Luna, and whatever peace had once existed had shattered, for good. The envelope was thick, heavy, and sealed with the kind of urgency that said everything before a word was even spoken. Brooke Logan didn't mince her tone when she placed it on the cafe table between her and Poppy. Take it, she said coldly. Leave Los Angeles. Take Luna with you and disappear. Poppy lifted her eyes from the envelope to Brooke's face. The smile was gone. The usual polished charm Brooke wore in public had hardened into something colder. An ultimatum masked in civility. Inside the envelope was a small fortune. Enough to disappear, to start over, to rewrite the past in another zip code. But Poppy didn't reach for it. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and smiled, thin, knowing, dangerous. You think this is about money? She asked, her voice steady. You think I've kept my mouth shut all these years because I was waiting for a payout? Brooke didn't blink. I think you know what's at stake if Luna's name becomes headline news. I'm protecting everyone, especially her. That's when Poppy dropped the first match. I still have the old medical records. The test results. The hair samples. The confidential forms. You think the past is buried? I've got the shovel, Brooke. The tension between them grew razor thin. For years, the whispers around Luna's paternity had been quiet enough to contain. But now, with Luna exposed as Brooke's daughter in the public eye, and with RJ emotionally spiraling, Ridge questioning every truth Brooke ever told, and Hope barely able to look her mother in the eye, the cracks were no longer manageable. And Poppy wasn't backing down. Not for money. Not for threats. Not anymore. Later that day, in the Forrester design office, Thomas tracked Poppy down. He had seen the confrontation from afar. Steffi had briefed him, suspicious of Brooke's tactics. Thomas didn't care about Brooke's control or even Ridge's reaction. What he cared about was Luna. Lost in the crossfire, devastated, ashamed, angry, and still grasping for an identity that kept shifting like sand beneath her feet. I can help you, Thomas said bluntly. You and Luna. I can keep the Forresters off your back. I can protect you both from Brooke. But you have to help me too. Poppy raised an eyebrow. Help you how? Tell the truth. All of it. What you've been hiding. What you know about Luna's birth. We need to end this. Luna deserves to know who she really is. And she won't get that if this becomes a war of silence. Poppy hesitated. Her silence wasn't just fear, it was strategy. She had lived too long in Brooke's shadow to trust easily. She had spent years protecting Luna from the fallout of old affairs. Buried secrets. And the ever-watchful Los Angeles media machine. But Thomas was different. His offer didn't reek of manipulation. It reeked of desperation. Still, Poppy wasn't ready to give up control. I'll think about it, she said, then vanished. But not for long. The next time anyone saw her, she was standing in the marble foyer of the Forrester mansion, in front of Eric's fireplace, clutching a slim red folder. Brooke walked in from the veranda and stopped dead when she saw her. What are you doing here? Brooke snapped. Poppy didn't flinch. You wanted to keep this in the dark. I want light. Let's do this in front of family. Donna appeared from the hallway, frozen mid-step when she saw them. She looked from Poppy to Brooke and realized she was stuck in the middle. Between loyalty and truth. Between two sisters. Between right and survival. Brooke moved fast, trying to defuse the moment. This isn't the place, Poppy. But Poppy's voice cut through the room like a blade. It's exactly the place. Your whole life is built on places like this. Homes that don't belong to you. Men you manipulate. Children you forget until they're useful. I'm done letting you control the narrative. Donna tried to intervene. Please, both of you, let's not, but it was already too late. Poppy opened the folder. Inside were the originals. Luna's medical files. Maternal history forms from a private clinic. Even a faded photograph of Brooke and an infant, taken weeks after Luna's birth. Brooke lunged forward to grab it, but Ridge had already entered from the other room, drawn by the raised voices. He caught a glimpse of the photograph, of Brooke's panicked face, and his expression turned to stone. What is this? Ridge asked, voice low. Brooke froze. Poppy didn't. She turned to Ridge, held the photo toward him. She's not just my daughter. She's Brooke's daughter too, and Brooke has spent every day since trying to erase it. Brooke's voice cracked. I was protecting her. I didn't want to destroy the family. I didn't want to lose hope, or RJ. Ridge's voice cut through her excuses. So you just rewrote history again? Like you always do? The room spun. Donna stood frozen, lips trembling. Eric slowly rose from his chair across the room. No one moved. Poppy looked directly at Ridge. She tried to pay me to disappear. Brooke turned red. That's not how it happened. Then let's find out the truth. Shall we? Poppy said, pulling out a final card. I've already scheduled a new DNA test. A court witnessed, notarized genetic profile. Luna's going to get a clear answer. Legally, publicly, and this time, you don't get to spin it. She handed Ridge the paperwork. A test date, a lab address, witnesses already confirmed. Ridge didn't say a word. He just stared at Brooke. The walls were closing in. Because this time, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about control, over the story, over the past, over the future of the Forrester family. And Brooke was finally losing her grip. Across town, Luna sat alone in her apartment, staring out the window. She had no idea that the war she'd been dragged into was accelerating. That Brooke and Poppy were going to battle not over her heart, but over the version of her that would be left standing when the dust settled. Thomas arrived at her door, hands in his pockets, face soft with concern. Something's coming, he said gently. And it's going to hurt. But when it's over, you'll finally know who you are. Luna didn't answer. She just nodded, as if bracing herself for an earthquake she could already feel under her skin. And somewhere across the city, the press began to murmur. Something about a sealed court record. About a Logan secret ready to detonate. It was no longer about money. It was about the power to tell the story first. And Poppy had just flipped the script.